A single sunflower seed rests on the rusted iron perch of a backyard feeder. To a human observer, the scene is static, a quiet vignette of suburban tranquility, but through the sharp, calculated gaze of a glossy black crow perched on a frost-covered power line, this patch of grass is a high-stakes arena of social calculations and shifting alliances. The crow tilts its heavy beak, its dark iridescent feathers catching the bleak morning light, analyzing every movement below. It is not acting on raw instinct. It is executing a complex mental algorithm, measuring the exact distance between a dominant rival and a potential ally. We have long viewed our backyard visitors as simple, solitary foragers driven by hunger. The reality unfolding outside your window is far more intricate, resembling a cold, calculated game of chess where every tilt of a wing is a coded message. Scientists monitoring these microhabitats are discovering that the local bird feeder is not a communal buffet, but a deeply stratified surveillance network. Consider the subtle, rhythmic clicks echoing through a dense morning fog as a flock of chickadees coordinates its movements across a brittle oak branch. These are not random vocalizations, but a sophisticated linguistic system used to establish a rigid, linear hierarchy. Ethologists studying avian behavior anomalies have revealed that within a single flock, every individual possesses a specific social rank, maintained through precise physical intimidation and psychological posturing. A low-ranking blue jay will freeze, its bright cerulean crest flattening against its skull, the moment a dominant flockmate lands on a nearby pine branch. This silent submission prevents physical conflict, conserving vital caloric energy in the dead of winter. The mechanism driving this social order is an evolutionary adaptation hidden deep within the avian brain, specifically inside a hyperdeveloped region known as the nidopallium caudolateral. This structure functions much like the human prefrontal cortex, processing complex social data and mapping out the relationships of every individual in the immediate territory. When a house sparrow approaches a food source, it does not just see another bird. It recalls a detailed mental ledger of past interactions. This is episodic memory, a mental time travel machine that allows a bird to replay past encounters frame by frame, remembering who retreated, who attacked, and who shared a foraging space. The backyard feeder becomes a theater of memory, where a single aggressive encounter from days ago dictates exactly who eats first and who is left to glean the frozen scraps from the dirt. But the true mystery deepens when we look beyond simple dominance and observe the phenomenon of selective cooperation. Field experiments using high-resolution video tracking have captured instances of what can only be described as tactical alliances. Two subordinate magpies, recognizable by the stark white patches on their sleek shoulders, will deliberately position themselves on opposite sides of a sweat cage. One magpie will make a loud, exaggerated fluttering motion against the wire, drawing the attention of a dominant male. While the alpha is distracted, defending its primary angle of approach, the second subordinate magpie silently slips in from the blind spot, securing the high-fat prize. This is not accidental overlap. It requires a cognitive capacity known as tactical deception, an advanced mental trait once thought unique to primates. To understand how these alliances form, we must examine the physical markers of avian stress and social bonding. When two finches spend weeks foraging within inches of each other, their biological systems undergo a measurable shift. Neurobiologists tracking hormone levels in wild populations have noted a significant drop in baseline corticosterone, the primary avian stress hormone, when specific pairs are allowed to feed together. Conversely, if these pairs are forcibly separated by a territorial rival, their heart rates spike and their foraging efficiency plummets. This suggests that birds form distinct, enduring social preferences that mirror human friendship, anchored by mutual benefit and shared security. They recognize the unique facial features, vocal frequencies, and flight patterns of their preferred partners, carving out micro-societies within the larger flock. This cooperative framework is governed by a strict code of reciprocity that punishes cheats and rewards reliable partners. In a dense thicket of blackberry brambles, a sentinel helper bird will ascend to the highest, most exposed twig, its small chest heaving against the biting wind. It abandons its own feeding opportunity to scan the gray horizon for the sudden, lethal silhouette of a Cooper's hawk. If danger appears, the sentinel emits a sharp, high-frequency alarm call that causes the entire foraging party to vanish into the dense undergrowth in a fraction of a second. The sentinel risks its own life to protect the group, but this altruism is not unconditional. Individual birds that fail to take their turn on the high branch are systematically ostracized, driven away from the prime feeding zones during the next freeze. The backyard is an ongoing intelligence test, a landscape modified by humans but governed by an ancient, secretive cognitive order. Every time you step outside to refill a plastic hopper, you are interrupting a complex diplomatic negotiation. The birds are watching, learning, and cataloging your movements, integrating human behavior into their own intricate survival strategies. They know which window opens, which hand drops the seed, and which cat poses a genuine threat through the glass. They are running a continuous risk-reward analysis, balancing the threat of predation against the social cost of losing their place in the hierarchy. The feeder is a crucible of urban evolution, forcing birds to sharpen their social intellect to navigate a world completely transformed by human architecture. This social ledger extends far beyond temporary truces over scattered seeds. It hardens into deep, multi-generational relationships that define the true architecture of avian society. Among corvids, these bonds cross the threshold into genuine cognitive partnerships. When a mated pair of ravens perceives a threat, perhaps a stray dog prowling near a rusted trash bin, they do not flee in random directions. Instead, they execute a synchronized defensive strategy, their heavy black wings beating in a perfect, parallel rhythm through the cold air. One raven drops low, deliberately drawing the predator's focus with a series of harsh, metallic rattles, while its partner swoops silently from behind, striking the animal's tail with a precise snap of its thick beak. This level of coordination requires shared intentionality, the ability of two minds to project a single, unified goal into the immediate future. The depth of these connections becomes most apparent when the bond is severed by death. Field biologists documenting the aftermath of a predatory strike have witnessed behaviors that challenge our traditional definitions of animal grief. When a long-term partner is killed, the surviving bird will often remain near the site for days, its feathers unkempt, ignoring prime foraging opportunities on a nearby wooden deck. It emits a low, plaintive vocalization, a specific frequency used only in the presence of that missing individual. Neurochemical analysis of birds experiencing this kind of social loss reveals a profound drop in dopamine levels, coupled with a surge in central stress pathways, replicating the exact physiological signature of human bereavement. They are not merely reacting to a vacancy in their territory, they are experiencing the psychological weight of a shattered alliance. This capacity for deep recognition is not confined to their own species. It expands outward to encompass the human beings who alter their landscape. In a groundbreaking experiment conducted on a university campus, researchers donned specific hyper-realistic rubber masks before trapping and banding a group of wild crows. Years later, those same crows, along with their offspring who had never witnessed the initial trapping, would erupt into a collective fury of harsh, scolding alarm calls whenever the mask appeared on a sidewalk. The birds had constructed a permanent mental profile of a specific human face, labeling it an existential threat. They passed this information down through generations, using a complex system of cultural transmission, where young fledglings learned to despise a specific visual pattern simply by observing the agitated posture and vocal intensity of their parents. Within the flock, this sophisticated communication network relies on a lexicon of sound that operates beneath the frequency of human awareness. A black-capped chickadee landing on a frost-rimed chain-link fence can alter the syntax of its call to convey precise structural data about a threat. By adding a specific number of clicks to the end of its signature warning note, it communicates the exact size, speed, and lethality of an approaching predator. A slow, heavy, red-tailed hawk warrants a brief, two-syllable alert. A small, agile merlin cutting through the pine needles demands a rapid, multi-layered cascade of sound that triggers immediate, total paralysis across the entire local avian population. The air is constantly thick with these invisible data streams, a network of surveillance that maps the movement of every living thing in the neighborhood. This linguistic complexity is mirrored by a ruthless enforcement of social justice within the community. In the canopy of a weeping willow, a group of blue jays will form a raucous, aggressive tribunal around an individual that has violated the unwritten laws of the flock. If a bird attempts to hoard an abundant food source, such as a freshly uncovered cache of acorns beneath a pile of rotting leaves, without alerting its foraging partners, it faces severe social retaliation. The flock will descend upon the offender, utilizing physical displacement and targeted pecks to the base of the skull, to drive the cheater into the outer, most dangerous margins of the territory. This collective policing ensures that individual greed never compromises the stability and survival of the group, a evolutionary mechanism that keeps the balance of power perfectly calibrated. As winter deepens, the pressure cooker of the backyard feeder forces these cognitive systems into hyperdrive. The birds must constantly calculate the shifting value of their social capital against the harsh reality of a plummeting thermometer. A single misstep in dominance posture, a failure to read the subtle tilt of a rival's tail feathers on a snowy picnic table, can result in a physical injury that proves fatal when the temperature drops below freezing. The birds we watch from our warm kitchens are navigating a high-stakes, real-time matrix of diplomacy, deception, and deep-seated loyalty. They are managing reputations, honoring ancient alliances, and nursing grudges that will outlast the season, transforming our ordinary spaces into a complex theater of non-human intellect. The final verdict on avian sociality forces us to dismantle our own anthropocentric biases. We are not looking at simple clockwork organisms driven entirely by the base mechanics of hunger and fear. When you look out at your yard and see a pair of crows sharing a stale crust of bread on a concrete driveway, you are witnessing the pinnacle of a parallel evolutionary path to high intelligence. They have conquered the urban landscape not by adapting their bodies, but by sharpening their minds and relying on the strength of their hidden networks. The backyard feeder is a window into a profound psychological landscape, a reminder that the wild world is not just watching us, it is remembering us, analyzing us, and surviving alongside us through the power of a quiet, calculated intelligence.